219. Marco Polo, the European visitor to Yuan, China. During the reign of Kublai Khan, the Mongol Empire, which had been unified under Genghis Khan, had already split into 4 separate khanates. The Golden Horde, Kipchak Khanate. The Chagatai Khanate. The Oghidai Khanate. The Ilkhanate. Although the Yuan emperors were still nominally recognized as the supreme rulers of all Mongols, in reality, each khanate operated independently. At this time, China was the world's most powerful and prosperous nation. Foreign envoys, merchants, and travelers from the West flocked to China to witness its splendor. Among these visitors, the most famous was Marco Polo. The Polo family's journey to China. The first expedition, Marco Polo's father and uncle. Marco Polo's father, Niccolò Polo, and uncle, Maffeo Polo, were Venetian merchants who frequently traveled abroad for trade. After the rise of the Mongol Empire, they took a large quantity of precious goods to trade in the Golden Horde, the Mongol-ruled region of Russia. However, when war broke out in that area, they traveled further east, reaching Bokhara in Central Asia, where they stayed for several years. One day, a Mongol envoy passing through Bokhara noticed the 2 European merchants and, intrigued, told them, "Our great Khan has never seen Europeans before. If you travel with me to see him, you will surely be rewarded. Besides, it would be the safest way to China." Niccolò and Maffeo, being adventurous, eagerly accepted the offer and journeyed to Xanadu, in modern Inner Mongolia, where they were granted an audience with Kublai Khan. Their meeting with Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan, curious about the West, received them warmly in his summer palace, asking numerous questions about Europe and its customs. The Polo brothers had no intention of settling in China permanently. However, Kublai Khan was fascinated by their stories of the West and entrusted them with a letter to the Pope, asking him to send Christian missionaries to China. With this mission, the Polos left China, embarking on a grueling 3-year journey back to Venice. By the time they returned, Niccolò's wife had passed away, leaving behind their 15-year-old son, Marco Polo. Marco Polo's voyage to the East. Hearing his father and uncle describe China's riches and grandeur, young Marco Polo was captivated and begged to accompany them on their return journey. Not wanting to leave Marco behind, Niccolò decided to bring him along. After meeting with the Pope, the Polo family set out for China once more, a journey that took over 3 years. Finally, in 1275, they arrived in China, where Kublai Khan, now emperor of the Yuan dynasty, personally welcomed them. Marco Polo in Kublai Khan's court. When the Polos entered the imperial palace, Kublai Khan immediately noticed a young man accompanying them and asked, "Who is this?" Niccolò proudly replied, "This is my son, and now, your Majesty's humble servant." Seeing Marco Polo's handsome features and bright demeanor, Kublai was pleased, exclaiming, "You have come at the perfect time." That evening, Kublai hosted a grand banquet in their honor and soon appointed them to serve in his court. Marco Polo's work for Kublai Khan. Marco Polo quickly learned Mongolian and Chinese, impressing Kublai with his quick intelligence and observational skills. Unlike many imperial envoys, who were unable to provide detailed accounts of local customs, Marco Polo paid close attention to the culture and daily life wherever he traveled. Kublai Khan soon began entrusting him with important assignments, sending him on missions across China and beyond. One of his earliest assignments was a diplomatic mission to Yunnan. He later traveled throughout the Yuan Empire, visiting major cities, including Hangzhou, Suzhou, and Beijing. He was also sent on foreign missions to Southeast Asia, where he visited multiple kingdoms. It is said that he served as the governor of Yangzhou for 3 years. For 17 years, Marco Polo worked for the Yuan dynasty, witnessing the empire's wealth, advanced technology, and governance. The Polo's departure from China. As time passed, Marco Polo and his family longed to return home. However, Kublai Khan cherished Marco's service and refused to let them leave. The escape opportunity, escorting a Mongol princess. At that time, the Ilkhanate, Persian Mongol Khanate, requested a royal marriage alliance. Kublai Khan selected a Mongol princess named Kokachin as a bride for the Ilkhan Arghun. However, the land route was dangerous, so the Ilkhan's envoys requested to escort her by sea. Since the Polos were experienced travelers, the envoys asked Kublai Khan to let them accompany the princess on her journey. Reluctantly, Kublai agreed, finally allowing them to leave China. The long journey home. In 1292, the Polo family set sail from China, traveling across the Indian Ocean and arriving in the Ilkhanate after a 3-year voyage. From there, they embarked on an arduous journey back to Venice, finally arriving home after 20 years abroad. Marco Polo's fame in Europe. By the time they returned, the people of Venice had assumed they were dead. Their sudden reappearance, dressed in Chinese clothing and carrying exotic treasures, stunned the city. People nicknamed Marco Polo Il Milione, Marco of a million stories, because his tales of China were so incredible. Marco Polo's capture and the writing of his travels. Soon after, war broke out between Venice and Genoa. Marco Polo, now a seasoned traveler, financed his own warship and joined the Venetian navy. Unfortunately, he was captured in battle and imprisoned in Genoa. In prison, he met a writer named Rustichello de Pisa, who recorded his stories, compiling them into a book titled The Travels of Marco Polo, Il Milione, also known as The Description of the World. A book that changed the world. In his book, Marco Polo provided detailed descriptions of China's major cities, including Dadu, Beijing, Hangzhou, Suzhou, and Yangzhou, praising their prosperity and cultural achievements. When published, his book amazed Europe, inspiring a new wave of fascination with China. Eventually, the Genoese released Marco Polo, allowing him to return to Venice, where he lived out the rest of his life. Marco Polo's lasting influence. Marco Polo's travels played a key role in expanding contact between China, Europe, and the Arab world. During this period, Arabian astronomy, mathematics, and medicine began spreading to China. China's 4 great inventions, the compass, printing, gunpowder, and papermaking, made their way to Europe. His book later inspired European explorers, including Christopher Columbus, who set sail hoping to find the riches of the East. Through his journeys and writings, Marco Polo became one of the most influential travelers in history, forever linking the East and West. 220. The Injustice to Doer, a tale that moves heaven and earth. During the early Yuan dynasty, under Kublai Khan's reign, China experienced economic prosperity due to policies promoting production and trade. However, this prosperity only benefited the Mongol aristocracy and wealthy officials, while the common people suffered under heavy taxation and corruption. To fund military campaigns and the lavish lifestyles of Mongol nobles, Kublai appointed a group of finance ministers who, instead of managing resources responsibly, collaborated with local officials to extort wealth. A society plagued by corruption and discrimination. The Yuan dynasty enforced a rigid ethnic hierarchy, dividing the population into 4 classes. Mongols, the ruling elite, enjoying the highest privileges. Ximu people, Central Asians, Persians, and Western Xia people favored foreigners with elevated status. Han people, the former subjects of the Jin dynasty, including Han Chinese, Khitan, and Jurchens. Nanren, Southerners, the former citizens of the Southern Song dynasty, who suffered the worst discrimination. Under this system, the Han and Southern Chinese were subjected to systematic oppression, facing discrimination, heavy taxes, and unfair treatment in legal matters. Following Kublai Khan's death, his grandson Timur Khan, Emperor Qingzong, took the throne. During his rule, corruption worsened and injustices skyrocketed. One investigation found over 18,000 corrupt officials and more than 5,000 wrongful cases. Amidst this dark and unjust society, many scholars used drama and literature to expose the corruption of the Yuan government. The rise of Yuan dynasty drama. During this time, zaju, variety plays, became extremely popular, especially in the capital, Dadu, Beijing. Scholars and playwrights, dissatisfied with government corruption, used zaju to criticize social injustices. Among them was Guan Hanqing, one of the greatest playwrights in Chinese history. Guan Hanqing, the people's playwright. Guan Hanqing was a scholar from Dadu who loved music and theater from a young age. He learned to play the flute, sing, and dance, and even worked as an official in the Imperial Medical Academy. However, his true passion lay in writing plays rather than medicine. At that time, actors were considered low-status individuals, but Guan Hanqing treated them as equals, often associating with performers and even acting on stage himself. Unlike other playwrights who catered to the tastes of the aristocracy, Guan Hanqing wrote for the common people, incorporating real-life injustices into his works. Among his many masterpieces, The Injustice to Dou-Er, also known as The Wrongs of Dou-Er That Moved Heaven and Earth, remains one of the most powerful Chinese dramas ever written. The tragic story of Dou-Er. The play follows Dou-Er, a poor young woman from Chuzhou, whose life is marked by misfortune and injustice. A life of suffering. Dou-Er lost her mother at a young age. Her father, Dou Tianzhang, was in debt and lacked travel funds to take the imperial examination. To survive, he sold Dou-Er as a child bride to the Kai family, where she was raised to marry their son. Shortly after their marriage, Dou-Er's husband fell ill and died, leaving her widowed at a young age. She was left to care for her aging mother-in-law, Madame Kai, and the two women struggled to survive in poverty. The villainous Zhang family. In Chuzhou, there was a vicious thug named Zhang Luer, who, along with his equally wicked father, Zhang Laoer, preyed on the weak. Realizing that Madame Kai and Dou-Er were vulnerable, Zhang Luer moved into their home, forcing Madame Kai to marry his father. With Madame Kai too frightened to resist, Zhang Luer tried to force Dou-E into marriage, but she vehemently refused, publicly insulting and rejecting him. Humiliated, Zhang Luer vowed revenge. The frame-up and Dou-Er's wrongful execution. A murderous scheme. One day, Madame Kai fell ill and asked Dou-Er to make a bowl of sheep's stomach soup. Seizing the opportunity, Zhang Luer secretly poisoned the soup, intending to kill Madame Kai and force Dou-Er into submission. However, just as Madame Kai was about to drink, she felt nauseous and refused, instead giving the soup to Zhang Laoer. Moments later, Zhang Laoer collapsed, convulsed on the ground, and died. A corrupt judge's verdict. Rather than taking responsibility, Zhang Luer falsely accused Dou-Er of murder, bringing the case to the corrupt magistrate, Tao Wu. Tao Wu had already been bribed by Zhang Luer and immediately arrested Dou-Er, torturing her into confessing. Despite enduring extreme pain, Dou-Er refused to admit guilt. Frustrated, Tao Wu threatened to torture Madame Kai instead, forcing Dou-Er to sacrifice herself to save her mother-in-law. Falsely convicted of murder, Dou-Er was sentenced to death. Dou-Er's final curse upon the world. On the day of her execution, Dou-Er, filled with grief and rage, cried out to the heavens, "Earth, if you have no sense of justice, why do you exist? Heaven, if you cannot tell right from wrong, you are unworthy of your name." She then made 3 final vows before her death. When she was beheaded, her blood would not spill on the ground, but on the white silk she wore. Though it was the peak of summer, heavy snow would fall to cover her body. Chuzhou would suffer a severe drought for 3 years as punishment for this injustice. As soon as she was executed, dark clouds gathered, and snow began to fall heavily, despite the fact that it was the scorching heat of June. For the next 3 years, no rain fell in Chuzhou, causing a devastating drought. Justice at last. Years later, Dou-Er's father, Dou Tianzhang, passed the imperial examinations and became a high-ranking official in the capital. Returning to Chuzhou, he reinvestigated Dou-Er's case, uncovering the corruption of Tao Wu and the lies of Zhang Luer. Zhang Luer was executed for his crimes. Tao Wu was stripped of his position and punished. Dou-Er's name was cleared, and her wrongful death was publicly acknowledged. A story that endures for generations. While the events of The Injustice to Dou-Er may not be based on a true story, the play reflects the widespread suffering of innocent people under corrupt and oppressive rulers. The scene of snow falling in June became a powerful symbol of injustice, and Dou-Er's story resonated deeply with the oppressed. For centuries, this play has been praised and cherished, cementing Guan Hanqing's legacy as one of China's greatest playwrights and a voice for the voiceless.